I gotta know, which camp do you land in? Are you with Sarah? Are you with Jonah? Or is there some in between? What are your feelings? What are your opinions? Let me know in those comments down below. And then, remember worthless scumbag Larry Nasser, the disgraced former USA gymnastics doctor? Or the monster who abused hundreds of athletes, some as young as 6 years old, including former Olympian gymnast Simone Biles? Probably the last time you heard of him, he was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in a small jail cell. Well, the update today is that almost changed, though not because he was released, but because reportedly he was stabbed in the back and neck multiple times by another prison inmate yesterday, suffering what one source called substantial injuries, including a collapsed lung, though he's reportedly in stable condition. I'm just left feeling like it could happen to a better guy. And personally, the more that I think about this, I'm happy he didn't die, because this just means more and more time that he's gonna have to worry about and look over his shoulder. Because it's not just a fear now, Larry, it's a thing that happened and can happen again. And while there's no such thing as justice fully served with monsters like Larry, Monday does seem like a slightly better day now. And then, Meta's new Threads app has just continued its meteoric rise, with Zuckerberg announcing this morning Threads reached 100 million signups over the weekend, and saying that's mostly organic demand and we haven't turned on many promotions yet. Can't believe it's only been 5 days. And it's not that people are just signing up, they appear to be using it. With The Verge reporting last week that when the app was launched Wednesday night, by Thursday morning, not only were 30 million profiles activated, there were 95 million posts and 190 million likes. Though of course, those numbers and even what we're talking about now, this is all very early days. But the success or failure of Threads isn't gonna be seen in like the next 2 weeks. Or we're seeing now, it could just speak to how interested people are in a Twitter alternative, but over days and weeks and months of use, people may go, this isn't really for me. Especially as it's become more and more obvious they're not trying to be a one-to-one Twitter replacement. With Instagram head Adam Mosseri saying the company is not actively encouraging politics and hard news on the platform, which of course historically are places that Twitter absolutely thrived. Though these days there's no shortage of critics saying that Twitter is harder to use for that. With among other things, feeds and top replies being absolutely swamped with people who paid for the check mark, rather than people in organizations that may have naturally just popped up. But even with Twitter, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens in general, but also with the traffic. Especially as Cloudflare CEO Matthew Prince posted yesterday, Twitter traffic tanking. And with that, posting a graph of what he says is Twitter's DNS ranking from January to now, which may or may not be connected to Elon Musk lashing out and saying Zuck is a cuck. And later tweeting, I propose a literal dick measuring contest. And this as he's publicly begging Mr. Beast to post videos to Twitter. But hey, we'll see how things play out, and I loves me some competition. And then the US federal government is going after Logan Paul right now. And today, this is not over his crypto scandals that many have called a scam, but instead this involves Logan Paul, KSI, and their Prime Energy drink. With even Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer slamming Prime Energy drink in a meeting with reporters yesterday and even demanding their company get investigated. Because apparently there are 2 main concerns with the product. The first being the allegedly absurd caffeine content of Prime Energy, which reportedly has 200 milligrams of caffeine per can, which to give you context, that's roughly the same as 2 Red Bulls or 6 Cokes. And then secondly, it's alleged marketing towards children, which is a very key thing because each drink actually carries a warning stating that it's not recommended for children under the age of 18. But it's being argued you have 2 social media influencers who are hugely popular among kids and they're promoting it as this cool, flashy drink, and so critics say the warning's meaningless. And specifically regarding how it's packaged and marketed, Schumer alleges that Prime Energy is promoted in a near identical form to Prime Hydration, which has no caffeine. And so with that saying, as a result, some parents have unknowingly bought the energy drink for their kids, with them also citing physicians who claim that it could cause health issues like disrupted sleep, mood disorders, headaches, jitters, and nervousness. And so with all that, he came out and announced
releasing a letter this morning asking the FDA to investigate Prime for number 1, its claims, number 2, its marketing aimed at kids, and number 3, its eye-popping caffeine content.
Now, to be fair, in its defense, Prime Energy does contain more caffeine than popular energy drinks like Red Bull, Monster, and NOS, but it is equal to other brands like Gatorade's Fast Twitch and Pepsi's Celsius. And in fact, some drinks like Rockstar and Bang, they have 100 milligrams more than Prime Energy. Though even with that, some critics argue that doesn't excuse Prime, saying that if anything, it just shows how out of control the entire energy drink industry has gotten in recent years. And also arguing that unlike other brands, Prime's ties to KSI and Logan Paul specifically draw in children. Though with that, I'd also say I'd love to see specific numbers, because I wonder what's the actual percentage of their audiences that are under the age of 18. And so that's the story as it is now, but with it, I'd love to know your thoughts on it. And then, y'all, working out consistently can be so hard, especially when you're doing it alone. But that's also why I want to thank Copilot for helping me through this journey since January. You know, Copilot takes the homework out of working out. Their coaches schedule workouts that you just follow. And one of my favorite things about Copilot is their expertise. Like when I was doing the dumbbell bench 1-arm row, my leg was too forward. The app showed me that my form was off, and once I corrected it, I messaged my coach Devin, and he checked my form to be sure I was doing it right. It's also no wonder Copilot was listed as one of the best personal training apps of 2023 by Forbes. And it's so simple. You just start with an onboarding call, you connect with a coach who makes customized workouts specific to your goals, and that's it. So if you want to join me on a fitness journey of your own, just click my Copilot link or scan the QR code to get a 14-day trial with your own personal trainer. Copilot is the best way to reach your fitness goals. And between my coach and the app, I'm more consistent and I work harder. Don't let this be your moment, your new day one to becoming that better, stronger, healthier you. You just got to sign up, because any day at any moment, that can be your first step. And with the guiding hand to co-pilot, your success has never been more attainable. And I feel like I'm proof of that because it just helped me kick it into another gear. Because remember, this is where I started my journey and this is where I'm at right now. And then Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama is messing with our military right now in a way we really haven't seen before, with this one Republican senator single-handedly blocking the smooth transfer of power within the highest ranks of our military. And specifically, he's using a procedural tactic to prevent the chamber from approving hundreds of promotions for high-ranking officers. And as far as why he's doing it, it's because of abortion. Because Tuberville objects to a Pentagon policy instituted after Roe was overturned that provides time off and reimbursement for travel to service members seeking abortions or other reproductive care like IVF. And that has made Tommy a big, mad, angry boy. So as a result, he's demanding that the Pentagon revoke the policy or that the Senate pass legislation overturning it. But until that happens, he's stopping the Senate from mass confirming military promotions, which, a very key thing, is a process that for generations has been totally non-controversial and done without any problems. While this has been going on for a little while now, it is about to cause some serious disruption starting right now. Because as of today, the Marine Corps will be unable to replace its top leader, who is required under law to step down from his post. And notably, more key leaders are set to do the same soon. For over the next few months, more than half the current Joint Chiefs are scheduled to step down from their posts, including the Staff Chiefs of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and even General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. With all that leaving the advisory body with more temporary leaders than ever before in American history. And that's a very massive deal because those temporary occupants are just placeholders. They're unable to make serious strategic decisions, which is basically the main job of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But it's also not just the top leadership positions being prevented from doing their job. This is also going to have a spillover effect down the chain of command for every officer waiting to replace someone else. And key thing, all of this is happening at a point in time where the U.S. is locked in a handful of serious and complex military operations, with the New York Times even explaining that this will effectively amount to leaving the president's chief military advisory body in an unprecedented state of flux at a time of escalating tensions with China and Russia. Which is why with all this, you have a ton of people saying that Tuberville's blockade is going to jeopardize the U.S. military's ability to respond to crises. And among those, you have Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin himself, who told senators back in March, there are a number of things happening globally that indicate that we could be in a contest on any one given day. Not approving the recommendations for promotions actually creates a ripple effect through the force that makes us far less ready than we need to be. And adding, the effects are cumulative and will affect families. It will affect kids going to schools because they won't be able to change their duty station. It's a powerful effect and will impact our readiness. And so all that's been echoed by other Democratic leaders like the White House press secretary, who argued that Tuberville's actions were a threat to our national security, as well as Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer condemning the damaging impact here. But also you even have top Republicans speaking out. Even Mitch McConnell opposes what Tuberville's doing, but still, he has refused to back down. Instead, floating that Republicans propose a bill overturning the Pentagon policy, or the Democrats introduce one codifying it. With Tuberville also arguing that the Senate could just approve each military promotion individually. With that, you have Senate staff saying none of those options are viable. Right? Legislation either blocking or affirming the policy would face too much opposition from opposing parties. And Senate leaders have rejected the idea of individual confirmations because it's just going to take too long. And honestly, no one really knows what's going to happen because Tuberville has just continued to reject compromises. So for now, we're going to have to wait and see how this standoff's going to play out. And I guess in the meantime, extra hope that we don't get into any serious military conflict, because already that would be less than ideal. But because of Tuberville's actions here, we're in an even worse place. And then we've got two big controversies right now, and we're going to start with the least controversial, the chemical weapons. I know that's a weird sentence, right? And that's because the head of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which oversees their destruction around the world, announced on Friday that the U.S. had irreversibly destroyed the last of its stockpile, which officially means that chemical weapons are essentially gone from the planet. But that's only officially and probably not really. And that's because Sudan, North Korea, and Egypt haven't signed a treaty that bans them, although it's unclear if and how many they actually possess. And on top of that, this is just the end of declared chemical weapons. It is very possible that nations have secret stockpiles, such as Syria, which has been accused of using Soviet-era chemical weapons in its civil war. Not to mention there have been clandestine uses of nerve agents linked to Russia. However, that doesn't completely take away from this milestone. Widely seen as a positive move, and it's been widely praised. However, the thing that's been far more controversial is America's plan to get rid of some of its cluster munitions. Because these can be bombs, artillery shells, or missiles that once they get a certain distance from a target, deploy a bunch of small bombs spread over a huge area. Right? It makes it so that one 155mm howitzer shell can hit an area bigger than a football field with tiny explosions that kill troops and disable vehicles. And because they can cover such massive areas, it means that they inevitably hit things they aren't supposed to while missing targets they are supposed to hit. Which also led the US to phase them out in 2016. But they didn't just disappear. We've been sitting on a huge stockpile of them. That is, until President Biden announced that as part of a new aid package to Ukraine, 155mm howitzer-based cluster munitions are going to be sent to fight Russia. And so many humanitarian groups and nations condemn the move and urge Ukraine not to actually use them, with them pointing out that upwards of 40% of the smaller bombs they drop fail to detonate when they're supposed to, and they get stuck in the ground, leaving areas dangerous for years or decades. Although notably, the US claims that the more modern ones they're sending Ukraine have a less than 3% failure rate. Also, others against the move have pointed to this clip where former Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked about reports of Russia using cluster bombs in Ukraine and whether it was a war crime, to which she said,
If that were true, it would potentially be a war crime.
Which brings up the question of, if there's so much controversy, why even supply them? Well, according to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, he told reporters that they were a bridge of supplies until production of conventional shells could catch up, saying, "We will not leave Ukraine defenseless at any point in this conflict, period." It also just so happens to solve the problem of getting rid of them rather than having to deal with actually dismantling them, though that is not an argument that he made. But regardless,